Today we are creating an inside the vase design, and I just wanted to point out that this is not a geometric design, but it does have a round appearance due to the shape of the bowl. So to start the design, we are going to add some water in the bowl. I recommend starting at about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, not too much, because then water will be all inside the bowl splashing around while we're trying to work. Next, we're going to add in our rocks. You can have any selection of rocks that you would like. I am using some decorative rocks that I purchased from Tulip Swirl. They are clear and black. You could use pebble rocks that go in the bottom of a pond or a walkway. You could even use like fishbowl rocks if you really wanted to. Your choice, it doesn't matter. So you're just going to drop them in there and put just enough rocks across the bottom to create like a layer. We can use these to help create stability in our arrangement by holding our stems in the water. First, we're going to add curly willow. Curly willow is rather wavy and it has a slender end that I just pointed out there. That's the end that we're going to insert first. When you put in the curly willow, the thin part is really good, and you're going to see that it naturally kind of will just curl into the bowl because it is rather wavy and curly. You're going to put the small end in the bowl first and just go with the natural flow of the curly willow. Try to avoid any sharp bends. You can, once you get it in there, guess how much you need to finish out and tuck in the other piece into the bowl. And that's going to create some stability. That's also going to create some of that swirl shape. You can use some of the rocks to hold down that tip of the curly willow in the water because you do want it to be able to get some water. Next, we're going to add our tulips. If you're pulling these straight out of the cooler, just be careful. Their stems can be slightly crisp and easy to break, as you saw right there. You are going to want to take off all of the leaves. We just are going to want the stem and the tulip. Make sure your tulip is clean. You can see there that the stem of a tulip is naturally flexy and bendy, which makes it a great selection for this type of design. You are going to want to trim them so they're not too long. Our goal with the tulips is to create a continuous swirl, and so we have to be careful where we place these in order for that to happen. So that first one's going to go towards the lower half of the bowl, and you can use the curly willow as stability if you need to hold down the stem and even the rocks in the water. You can see here I have to play with it for a few minutes in order for it to get that stem to stay in the bottom of the bowl. It's also going to have a slight upward. You're following the swirl that we've created with the curly willow. So it's not going to be just one straight line of tulip. This is going to be the start of your swirl of tulips. Your second tulip is going to be just a little bit shorter, and this is going to finish the swirl of tulips. And so you can see here, I realized that was way too long. I'm going to place the stem kind of where the other tulip head left off, and I'm going to finish that swirl of tulips. And the tulip head is going to go right up under the rim of our bubble bowl. Make sure the stem is in some water. We go back at the end and I added a smidge more water for tulips. Tulip stems continue to grow even after they are cut. So just providing them some water and realizing that these tulips will probably continue to grow. So you won't be crazy if in a few days you notice they're a little bit longer. It is natural. I played with mine just to ensure that they were placed correctly. Like I said, they have like a small upward angle. We're going for a swirl. Next, I'm going to add in the sword fern. Sword fern is very full, and we want it to be more dense. So first thing we need to do is take off the tip at the top, which I actually forgot to do when I did this example. But you're going to want to take off the very top of that sword fern because it will wilt very easily and look not so pretty. We're going to skip every 2 to 4 leaves and then pull off 2 to 4 leaves. So you'll leave 2 to 4 and then pull off 2 to 4. And that's going to help create our sword fern to be more dense so that it's not just a bunch of greenery in the bowl. It's more of an accent. So this would be equivalent to us greening down in a traditional arrangement. Now that we have it nice and dense, we're going to work on placing this sword fern in the bowl. And it can be kind of tricky because you don't want to take away from the tulips and the curly willow. You almost want to do another swirl inside of the swirl. I trimmed mine up here, and you're just going to kind of do what you did with the tulips, and I put that thinner piece in first. The sword fern will naturally just kind of bend back. You do want to see the pretty side of the green. You don't want to see that light green. You want to see the darker green. And you're just going to put it in the bowl, following the swirl you've already created. I played with the sword fern a lot just because I was really struggling. So it's okay and it's natural to struggle. The beauty of this arrangement is that there's no foam. So if you don't like it, just take it out and try again. I finally got my sword fern to the size and density that I would like, so here I place it. When placing in this arrangement, always start from the bottom near the water and swirl upwards. Don't try to start near the top and go swirl into the bowl. We're going to swirl out of the bowl. So I placed an end of it in that water and then just let my sword fern naturally kind of curve into my bowl. And if something falls or slips, guys, you can just, use the curly willow, the rocks. The more branches you put in there, the more stability your tulip stems will have in order for it to hold that swirl. I'm going to repeat the step with sword fern number 2. We probably could have gotten away with using one stem. The only thing is that the top of the sword fern is more bendy than the bottom. And so we're going to use the top of this sword fern. So you're just going to repeat those steps. And there you can kind of see where it starts and ends. Okay, here we go, placing sword fern number 2 carefully, continuing that swirl. So this one will finish the swirl of sword fern up. So where one leaves off, you're going to pick up with the other, and now you have a swirl of sword fern inside of your swirl of tulips and curly willow. Lastly, we have limonium. You can also use seafoam status. Southern Floral was out of the seafoam status at the time. They subbed it out for some limonium, which works just as well. Limonium also has that natural curve, so you're going to have to work with that. You want to make sure that you're putting the pretty side, so that purpley blue color, out into the bowl facing outward so that you can see it from the outside. You don't want the purple facing inward because then nobody would get to see it. I only use 4 tiny clusters in this arrangement, so 1 stem is more than enough. Just like in a traditional arrangement, the seafoam, or the limonium in this case, is going to be our filler. And so what you'll do is you'll look inside, look around the bowl, look from bottom to top, top to bottom, and see where we might have any gaps in our arrangement. So if there's any absent of color, if there's any holes where it's just the bubble vase and no material, that's where you'll want to go and place your limonium. Now, be careful because you still need to make sure that you have a swirl of limonium. And so I always, like I said, work from the bottom to top. So look inside the bowl, look near the rocks and water, place that there first, and then work your way up to that tulip that's near the end of the bowl, the top of the bowl, the rim of the bowl. And that is where your last piece of limonium should be placed. So I placed 4 clusters, and what I did is I just kind of spun my design around and then placed them. Don't forget that you can use sword fern, curly willow as stability for your limonium. Make sure that you do leave a little bit of stem on there so that they can get water from the bottom of your bowl. I've successfully placed all my limonium, and I should have essentially a purple swirl inside of all of my other materials, filling any holes or gaps. Once you get things placed, leave them alone. Don't do what I do. I pick and pick. I added a little bit more water just to ensure all my stems were in the water so that they continue to grow and live. And you can kind of see that that tulip and last piece of limonium is coming out just a tip over the rim of the bubble bowl, and that's totally okay. Next is that Gaelic sleeve. That is optional. You can put the Gaelic sleeve in at the bottom. It is totally up to you. It is optional. I personally like it better with just the rocks, so I end up taking it out, but I wanted to show you what it looked like with it on. And I took it out. So there you have it. We have a nice swirl design, a swirl of materials in a bowl. Something unique, something different. I hope you enjoyed.